Streaming. Right, that's on.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Welcome to our meeting of the Town Centre Revival Committee. We have 12 items on our agenda for this evening. Just a reminder to the public that this is a remote meeting. It is being streamed live onto the Council's YouTube channel, and therefore we are not in control of the live comment section. So if you are commenting, please do so considerately towards others. I will ask that members and officers mute themselves throughout the course of the meeting so that we can hear one another. It may be necessary when our presentations are on for us to turn our cameras off to enable the smooth running of the meetings, but we will kick the meeting off. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. We are a full house of members. I'd like to welcome Councillor Don Morris to this committee this evening as well, who is a new standing member of the Town Centre Revival Committee for the opposition. So welcome to you, Councillor Morris. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare any interests? If you could wave at me, I will bring you in. No member is indicating, and therefore we will move on to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of our previous meeting held on the 9th of September. Firstly, are there any matters arising from the minutes that any member wishes to bring to our attention? In which case, can I ask members of the committee to unmute themselves, and we will record a vote of the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Harrison, how do you vote?
In favour.
Councillor Burton-Sampson?
In favour.
Councillor Headley?
Agreed.
Councillor Henry?
In favour.
Councillor Morris?
I'm going to abstain, Chairman, because I wasn't at the last meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will vote in favour. So the minutes are carried. Thank you, members. Agenda item 4 is on pages 11 to 13 of our agenda, which is the work programme update. We are asked to endorse and vote on the work programme. Firstly, is there any item that members wish to bring up or add or query in relation to the work programme? And no member is indicating. I do want to
just... Sorry, Leader, I did raise my hand on it.
Oh, sorry, go on, Councillor Headley.
Yeah, would it be appropriate on the work plan to add as a standing item an update on Pitsea regeneration schemes and Langdon?
Yeah, they are standing items under the town centre updates. So we were here tonight as well about Langdon and Pitsea. So we can bring those forward and we can, I think we will be in a position to say more about the Langdon, the Pitsea regeneration in a few weeks' time after discussions are progressing well with London and Cambridge, but we will cover that under the town centre update. I do just want to draw members' attention to the fact that the work programme does state that the next meeting is scheduled for the 26th of January, but I would quite like us to hold in our diaries the 15th of December as a additional meeting. So the 15th of December is identified. We'll confirm with members afterwards whether that is okay for everyone and there's not something drastic that we're missing. We may be out of lockdown by then and all out at Christmas parties, but I'm hoping that the 6 of us will still be here and we will have a meeting of this committee on the 15th. It may not be necessary, but I just want us to hold that date in our diaries. If there are no further questions or queries or additions to be had on the work programme, can I ask members to unmute themselves again as we look to consider and endorse the work programme? And I'll kick off with Councillor Harrison. How do you vote?
In favour.
Councillor Burton-Sampson?
In favour.
Councillor Headley? Sorry, can you say that again?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Henry?
In favour.
Councillor Morris?
In favour.
I vote in favour as well. Thank you, members. The next item, agenda item 5, is on page 15 to 27 of your agenda, and this is in relation to the draft service budget. And we, as a service committee, are asked to consider a budget that will be presented to Policy and Resources in January before going on to full council in February. Mr. Larkman is on the call, so too is Tomasz, if any member wishes to ask any questions. But Richard, do you wish to introduce the item?
Just very briefly, just to point out a few things. So this is the first of the 6 Service Committee budget meetings that are happening over the next 6 weeks. And as Councillor Callaghan has just pointed out, the overall budget will be considered by Policy and Resources in January and in Council in February. Those of you who sit on or attend one or more of those service budget committees will get used to the format. The format sets out the financial challenge facing the Council. Just to point out that the local government finance settlement for this year, we know that it will only be for 1 year, but we won't know what it looks like until after the publication of the spending review, which I believe is next week or the week after. I can't quite remember when that is now. There's a short paragraph setting out the impact of the current pandemic on the Council's financing, just to give you some context. I'd like to advertise the fantastic technical briefings that are coming up. The first one is towards the end of November, covering such fascinating topics as Treasury, non-Treasury investments, HRA reserves, pensions, commercial activity, and the settlement if and when we get it. The dates have been made available to you, but we haven't decided which topic we're going to do on which date yet. We hope to do that next week. I would encourage you to attend. The draft budgets are in the enclosures. There's a commentary on the main issues affecting services looked after this committee. And then, Chair, I would just suggest that if Tomasz has anything he wants to add before we take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Larkman. Tomasz?
Yeah, just to add, Chair and Richard, we've set aside a key sort of budget for the implementation team for delivering of the regen strategy for Basildon Town Centre, together with an appropriate supporting budget proposal to cover the various work streams and feasibility work. That's the key points, Chair.
Thank you. And I think it's also worth pointing out that not only are we talking here in terms of the revenue budget around the team and the resourcing of the team to make it happen, but the capital budget does also make clear that going forward there is £15.5 million, of which 10 million is earmarked for Wickford, £500,000 for Nevermain, and 5 remaining for the cinema and East Square. So that is already earmarked in the capital budget, so members can be aware of that. Councillor Harrison.
Tomasz just mentioned the employment basis for the Basildon Town Centre. I'm a bit concerned that on page 23, the only employees, etc., are related to the town centre master plan, not all of the other town centres, i.e. Wickford for regeneration, Langdon and Pitsea.
Can we just clarify that point, Tomasz?
Certainly, Chair. The key focus is to utilise the existing regen team to help deliver on those wider projects in Wickford and other town centres. And the implementation team was the additional resource to help us accelerate the delivery within Basildon Town Centre, in particular to focus on the delivery of the regen strategy.
Can I ask? Sorry, Councillor Harrison wants to come back.
I take that point, but if the regeneration of Langdon, Pitsea and Wickford comes under this committee, surely there should be a budget line for that in this budget forecast. Or is it somewhere else on another committee?
Richard, are you waving at me there? Richard?
Yeah, if I may. Councillor, yes. So the regen, Tomasz's regen team, which is supporting the development of the other places that you mentioned, that's considered by the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee. So the budget for that is within there. Okay.
I think also we need to add into this that alongside the page 23 schedule there, that there is also the issue of BTCM and obviously the council's ambition there to bring BTCM within or us to take over the largest share of BTCM and move that forward. Councillor Harrison, you're indicating.
Yeah, I can't accept what Mr. Larkman says, because either regeneration of the other town centres comes under this committee or it doesn't. Because I'm not a member of those other committees, that particular committee. I don't believe you are, Chairman. I'm not sure any member here is. Yet you're talking about the people responsible for the regeneration of those other town centres come under the remit of another committee. It doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
I think to add clarity there, obviously Tomash's team covers economic development, covers growth, covers planning, covers strategic planning, covers regeneration. So it covers all of those areas. So clearly when the strategic planning committee, clearly when the economic development committee meet, there will be elements within those draft service budgets that will have to make clear the resource implications there. I think what we're seeing here is an additional top up here that is being indicated for this committee going forward. Councillor Headley, you were waving at me there.
Yeah, I think in support of Councillor Harrison, he makes a reasonable point in as much that if there is a financial implication for supporting the regeneration work going on in other towns within the boroughs, for clarity, it would be more transparent if those budget lines were included, even if it was only as a note to where to find them in other committees.
Okay, point taken. Councillor Harrison.
I echo what Councillor Headley says, because under the capital funding, the £10 million capital fund for Wickford comes under this committee. So why not? We have the reports to this committee of the people who are carrying out these acts on behalf of this committee on the regeneration of Langdon, Pitsea and Billericay if necessary, and Wickford. It doesn't make sense that the revenue part of it isn't here, yet the capital part is.
Okay, I think what we're discussing is that the revenue part in relation to the additional top up over and above the existing growth team, as outlined along all three different areas, different service committees, that is in the budget book, that will be going to P&R, that will go to the relevant committees. Here, this is the additional 750,000 for this committee and for this committee area. I don't know, Richard, if I'm saying that wrong, but that to me is how I see this. Yep.
No, that's absolutely right, right, Councillor. Just if it gives Councillor Harrison any comfort and Councillor Headley any comfort, that the budgets do exist, they're being considered by other committees. We did have a debate about whether or not we should apportion those budgets, apportion elements of Tomash's team that is supporting the matters that this committee is considering. And we decided not to. We'll take your comments on board, and certainly in the future, there's no barrier to budgets going when members would feel it best to go. Clearly for some members we made the wrong call here, but Councillor Callaghan's explanation is spot on. The budget that is here is the top up to the existing regeneration budget that Tomash has that supports regeneration across the borough.
Thank you. Tomash, you indicated.
Yeah, basically just to echo those points, we're very keen, Councillor Harrison, to ensure that the team is augmented and supported, and that we can deliver across all the towns, as you rightly indicate. And as you'll be aware, you'll see in the updates coming forward later by Matt, how we are implementing those resources across the piece and to deliver the projects across all towns.
I think it's also important to add in here that the change, as we are trying to, as a council, as I see this, the change that we are trying to make here is around avoiding silo working. There is quite clearly a remit here in the growth agenda that covers, as I've said earlier on, 3 committees, 4 if you include P&R around strategic assets and commercial, whatever it might be. So it's important that when we look at the budget book as a whole, that there is crossover across these committees. But there does also need to be a mandate from a service committee as to what that money should be spent on, as it is taxpayers' money. And what I think page 23 here is trying to do is to say that this 750 for 21-22, a further 250 in 22-23 is the top up that this committee is mandating or hoping, because there is still another 2 rounds of P&R and then full council to go, that this committee is hoping that that money can be ring-fenced, if you like, for this regeneration out of the total growth budget. So I accept that we can add more information into this, and certainly when it goes to P&R, the full budget book will be there for everybody to look at, and we will see that this, if committee is minded to approve this tonight, will sit as an add-on to that total regen and growth budget. Are there any further questions from members this evening on the recommendations that are laid out on page 16 of the agenda? No member is indicating, in which case we will move to the vote. Recommendation 1 and 2 on page 16 as laid out. I'll kick things off and vote in favour. Councillor Harrison?
In favour.
Councillor Burton-Sampson?
In favour.
Councillor Headley?
In view of the fact that my group, in all probability, will be tabling an alternative budget, I'm voting against.
Okay. Councillor Henry?
Against.
Councillor Morris? Councillor Morris, how do you vote? Councillor Morris has dropped off of the screen. I will just...
No, he's back.
You back? Councillor Morris, can you hear me? I think you're on mute. Can we unmute Councillor Morris? Is that possible?
Do apologise, Chairman. The signal dropped out.
No, can I ask how you're voting on the recommendations?
Against.
Okay, thank you. In which case, on my casting vote, the vote is carried for the recommendations. Thank you. We will take those comments on board as we move into the next service committee and thereafter. Thank you, members. Thank you to our finance officers as well. Agenda item 6 is the Basildon First Charter. This builds on the commitment of the administration to ensure that development in the borough, regeneration in the borough, is for Basildon residents, for Basildon businesses, and that Basildon's residents and businesses are at the front of the queue when it comes to housing, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to local trades. And we set out this charter tonight. And in a moment, I'll ask Joe and our policy manager, Tom, to talk through the purpose of the charter. But this is to say that whilst the planning laws over the course of the last 10 years have been reformed to weight very much in favour of the developer rather than in favour of the democratic process, something which we know as a committee, because we've discussed before, is being put on steroids with permitted development right now. This is an attempt by the council to say very clearly, if you want to build in Basildon, you better believe in Basildon, and that you better come with us on this journey to support our residents and to support our businesses. And I have to say, I think that the charter has set out, and we can have a discussion on this tonight, particularly in lieu of the feedback and the consultation feedback we had from the Basildon Regeneration Strategy, which we've taken through this committee, I think speaks to some of the points that and the concerns that the public have raised during those consultations, both here and in the pre-app process as well. And I'm very confident that the developers who are wishing to build in Basildon will sign up to this charter so that it will be local people and local businesses that are put front and centre of this regeneration. And I think it provides, therefore, a blueprint for further regeneration schemes across the town. And of course, it will need to be tailored. It will need to be speaking Wickford, speaking Pitsea, speaking Billericay, speaking Langdon to serve the residents and the businesses there effectively. But I think it sets a course for how the council wishes to engage in a relationship with developers that is a sizable difference from the past. So that is by way of introduction. Joe, I'm going to hand over to you, and then we'll hear from Tom.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've covered many of the points that I was going to make, but just to add, I think it's worth sort of talking about the fact that this has been developed in conjunction with a range of different colleagues across the council, and also, there has been some informal consultation with the developers themselves, who we would obviously need to put this in place. the emphasis is very clearly on ensuring that the local developments that happen across the borough are enabled to give the best possible benefits to the people that are already here, and to ensure that it's done in a way that's truly inclusive and builds on the energy and the opportunity that these sorts of developments provide. We're not although this particular iteration is focused specifically on Basildon Town Centre, it has been developed in a way that ensures it can be easily transferable to any development in the borough. So as other things come online, the charter can be changed easily and quickly to ensure that happens. It's also worth pointing out that this works in conjunction with some other developing policy areas. So the council is revisiting its good employment charter. We're also going to be bringing a social value policy to Policy and Resources Committee on the 3rd of December. And all of these things fit together to ensure that we're maximising the impact that we have as an organisation, and also as a leader of place, and ensuring that we're getting the most value from the activity that's happening within the borough. Underneath all of this, Tom and the team that he leads have done some really, really good work to develop some potential policy ideas as well. So at the moment, they're being used just as a way of framing the conversation and a way of officers progressing some of these initiatives. But we have done some work to look elsewhere and look at some of the things that we could perhaps bring forward as by way of intervention once we get a little bit further down the track with some of these developments. I think Tom has got an updated version of the charter that he's also going to try to share on screen. So if I stop talking there, and then I'll hand over to Tom just to take you through it in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Joe. Could everybody see my screen firstly, and secondly hear me?
Yeah, to both.
Thank you very much. As the chairman has said, as Joe has said, the Basildon First Charter has been developed to optimise the social value capture arising from development in the borough. The first iteration that I've got on screen is tailored for Basildon Town Centre, but of course it can easily be tailored for the other town centres or for developments more generally across the borough. The idea, of course, developers wishing to work with the council sign up to the charter, as has already been said. It's all about optimising the social value capture for the residents and businesses of the borough. Informal discussions with developers on the charter concept and detail have been positive. The charter itself, which the text of which can be found at enclosure 2, contains 7 promises. These focus on housing, communication, inclusivity, sustainability, local labour, skills, and the supply chain. It will align with the emerging Good Employment Charter, which is being drawn up in conjunction with local businesses, and the forthcoming Social Value Policy, which is going to Policy and Resources Committee on the 3rd of December for adoption. As Joe said, we've undertaken a companion piece to identify both good practice from elsewhere and innovative ideas to capture social value, and the policy options are grouped according to the 7 promises you've seen in the draft charter, and they provide an aid memoir for colleagues who will be involved in negotiating with developers. And the paper recommends that the committee approves the Basildon First Charter for use by the council as a tool to engage developers in placing social value at the centre of their proposals. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Joe. If we could stop sharing the screen so we can see each other. Thank you. Councillor Burton-Sampson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the officers for putting this together alongside members, and also for the presentation tonight. You know, for me, this is vitally important. I have had a number of conversations with a number of residents over recent months, and one of the biggest concerns with any development is that are the people of Basildon Borough going to benefit? And I think what this charter very clearly sets out is, yes, they are. You know, people want homes for Basildon people. That's what I'm hearing all the time. Are young people who are struggling to get on the property ladder, getting their first foot up onto that property ladder, or just getting a home at a decent rental. This sets out that commitment to making sure those properties are primarily and first and foremost for Basildon people. But I think the other really key thing about this charter is that as we come out of this pandemic, and hopefully we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel now in the distant future, but it's coming. We need to make sure that Basildon is on the right foot in terms of making sure that there's jobs for our residents, that there's opportunity for our businesses to work within our borough. And again, with the skills promise and the labour promise, this very, very clearly commits to making sure that Basildon people are right at the fore. As the town centre develops, so do they, and so do they benefit from it. So I 100% support this. I think it's a brilliant initiative to put this in place and to encourage all those who want to invest in Basildon, who want to show they believe in Basildon, to actually put their name to this charter. So well done, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton-Sampson. Do we have any other members wishing to indicate? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. First thing I say, this should have been done years ago. Yeah. It's excellent. And whilst it only applies in this charter at this point in time to the Basildon Town Centre regeneration, it's something that must apply across the borough in any of our developments. I think it's important. What I like about it is its brevity, actually, but it's very concise, but it highlights the important things. And I cannot believe that any councillor on this council could possibly oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Any other member wishing to come in? Councillor Headley.
Thank you, Leader. It's quite interesting. I mean, it is noted in the report that the Public Services Social Value Act 2012, I believe in 2013, it was actually Lord Young who was advising the Prime Minister at that time on public service social value, which centred around how councils and authorities procured benefits in the wider social, economic and environmental benefits. And I think this piece of work that we're presented with fails to I can't see any mention of environmental. I guess that it goes without saying that that will be part of the strategy for the regeneration. I'm particularly interested in waste disposal from potentially very high-rise, high-density flats within the town centre. But I don't think this goes far enough, actually. I don't think it explains in detail. We've always had a Basildon First policy in terms of our housing policy. And I think for that reason, because of the shortcomings in this report, whilst I won't be voting against it, I won't be supporting it, I'll be abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Just by way of response to that, I mean, the sustainability promise very clearly says we will commit to protecting the environment, minimising waste and energy consumption and using other resources. So, I mean, in terms of talking about environmental sustainability, it is there in black and white. I think it's also worth noting that we are calling on developers to be part of the considerate constructor scheme as well, so that people can have confidence in that people will be, these developers, they must engage with the public, with businesses, with other key stakeholders, and communicate with them in ways which is accessible to them. I think where this is a marked difference is that, of course, in terms of the housing stock, the HRA stock that Basildon Council has, yes, that's absolutely right. We have a criteria. It is Basildon First on our housing stock. But what this is doing is it's going further than that. And it is saying that on stock that the council won't own, in private rent and in private sale, that Basildon people must be put first. And I think a key line in this charter, where it says that where new developments are popular and oversubscribed, developers will prioritise to make sure that properties go to local people most in need of a home. And getting people to sign up to that. It talks in this charter about creating employment opportunities for people and also for disabled people and for young people in particular. It talks about the skills promise and about how developers should work with colleges and schools to create apprenticeships and to create work experience placements. And it talks about making sure that it is local businesses, local tradespeople, local community initiatives that are part of the supply chain. So it isn't chapter and verse. It is to the point. This has to be Basildon first, whether this is private rent, private sale. If you want to build in Basildon, Basildon has to come first. It is unlike anything else that the council has ever had before when it comes to getting these developers signed up to our way of thinking. And I'm confident that if the council is minded to pass this tonight, we will see very quickly developers coming forward to say, yes, they can get on board with that. I push back slightly there on what Councillor Headley has said, because it is quite clear in this charter tonight that those points around waste, around energy, around environmental sustainability are covered by the report. Are there any other members who wish to come in? Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chairman. I, in principle, have no problem at all supporting this. I think it's a good place to start. It's a good platform, and I'd like to see how it would operate in conjunction with the other two items mentioned in the presentation. So I don't have an issue with it. I think it's a really good place to start. I mean, my one concern is our communication promise. I think we need to, as a council, as an authority, we are always going to need to work harder on that and take the residents of this borough along on the journey with us. Whether we believe we've consulted correctly or incorrectly, we are always going to need to do better on bringing people along with us. So I have no problem with supporting it, but I just have those remarks. Thank you.
I think the Deputy Chief Executive would probably concur here that I would agree entirely with your assessment about comms and about the fact that we always need to improve comms going forward. So you have an ally there in me pushing comms left, right and centre. So completely. Are there any other members who have questions or queries or remarks about the Basildon First Charter? No, good. Page 29, the recommendation is laid out. Can I ask members to unmute their microphone? And we will kick off. Councillor Harrison?
In favour.
Councillor Burton-Sampson?
In favour.
Councillor Headley? Councillor Headley, you are muted.
Oh,
You're still muted.
You muted him.
Once more.
can you hear me now? I've unmuted several times.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go on. What are you doing?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Henry?
4.
Councillor Morris?
4.
And I vote in favour as well. Thank you, members. The Basildon First Charter is now policy. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tom, for all your help and support on that. Feel free to stay. You do not have to. As we move to agenda item 7, which is the development of delivery routes as part of looking at JVs, looking at how the council will go forward with partners. And Tomasz, I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. If I just share my screen with members. Can I just confirm everybody can see the presentation development delivery routes on the screen? Okay, yes. Great. Thank you. So again, this is just a summarized version of the report that you have before you, which sets out the key principles and effectively outlines and explains the various options that are available for delivering those projects outlined by the Chair, and particularly how the council could deliver them in the town centre and the wider borough, because the principles would apply the same across all towns, as previously mentioned, particularly by Councillor Harrison. These would be effective for Wickford as well. So the purpose of the paper is to inform members of the options available, identify those objectives and principles to enable and secure those development opportunities, and set out the next steps for officers and external advisors to advance this work accordingly. A little bit of a indication here of the many ownerships that I know the Chair's outlined previously. Significant number indicated on the plan on the screen. And it gives an example of who could develop and bring forward the various sites and projects, whether they be existing owners who may develop. It may be a sort of a partnership arrangement, site. It could be a site that is acquired as part of a site assembly with a view to redevelopment. And from a partnership perspective, it comes not only from an assembly point of view or a marriage perspective, where you have two adjoining landowners and there's a greater benefit achieved by that joint arrangement, but also it could act in terms of a developer through that arrangement. And as you can see there are in excess of 50 freeholders. So you can imagine sitting below that a significant number of long leaseholders and subtenants as well. So what would the council's role be? Well, here are the top 5, as well as the 6th one about entering into a joint venture, but it could be an overall promoter of a site. It could look at providing assistance from a site assembly perspective. It could provide sites such as various ones that we have. It could, for example, link in the market paving with the Eastgate proposals. It could be a site developer on its own basis, whether or not that is such as the cinema site, or it could be a development partner, such as in tandem with the Homes England and the housing infrastructure, which will form part of a report later. But from a joint venture perspective, there's a little diagram there on the right-hand side, just to give you a little bit of a sort of understanding how the respective parties could form an agreement. And really it comes back to a range of things of what elements everybody is putting in, what the appetite of risk is as well, and therefore what the returns will be based on those inputs and outputs accordingly. And it could be for a single development site, or it could be across a program of a number of sites within the town centre. Key principles here on this slide is just to identify the measures really that would be utilised in assessing those options. So what outcome would the council like? What delivery would it be seeking? What are the finance impacts, rewards, risks? What resources would be required? We've heard this evening about the resource requirement to deliver this, care of the top-up budget. And also, what are the wider benefits? Because it's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about placemaking and what are we trying to achieve for the wider benefits for the residents in the borough, such as greater social provision as well, whether it be education or health. So some key risks identified as well, members. These are all factors that would have to be taken in consideration and would all be included in a future report on various projects, both from financial, commercial, legal, reputational and political ultimately. And you can see there just some examples of the sorts of things, and particularly in this current climate. So just reverting now to the key recommendations which you have in the report. I won't repeat them, but essentially just there on the screen for noting, members. And over to you, Chair, for any of the questions raised by members as well. And I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Tomasz. We just unshare.
Yep. Trying to get this. Unfortunately, my screen. There we go. Hopefully. I'm sorry I've lost you for this moment. Let me just try and recover. There we go.
Thank you. Members, open this up for questions. Does any member wish to come in on this item? That is Councillor Headley. You are muted, Councillor Headley.
I wasn't muted at my end, but as you know from previous comments made at other committees, the Conservative group have very severe reservations about the way the consultation was undertaken on the master plan. even allowing for the fact that you were handicapped by having to do this during a pandemic. Some of the reservations I have around the report, if we look at the site assembly, which comes under 2 on page 39, there are deep concerns with the threat of compulsory purchase orders. And you mentioned in an earlier item tonight that you wanted to avoid a developer's charter. But it says here the council would require a full indemnity for costs from an owner developer prior to engaging in a CPO procedure, a full agreement to fund the acquisition costs in the event of a CPO being obtained. Now, no developer that I'm aware of has compulsory purchase order powers. The only body that has CPO powers are Basildon Council, and there is a history. When the new town was being developed, my wife's family lost a property in Langdon through CPO, and there is still a memory of the way CPO was used in the past in Basildon. What I would like an explanation of is if you had 3 or more developers interested in a site, but they couldn't acquire that site from the current landowner, are you saying that the council would intervene, choose one of those developers and allow that developer's money to be used to CPO a site within the town centre? If so, how would you choose that developer? And wouldn't that be tantamount to predetermining a planning application, because you would have to know in advance what that developer intended to do with that particular site? I'll let you answer that before I continue.
Okay, I'll bring Thomas. I mean, my initial view is it would obviously all be subject to procurement, but over to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Just to try and provide a little bit of context to that for Councillor Headley. Essentially, with any proposal, if we were looking to invite a partner arrangement, whether it's a JV or otherwise, yes, there would be a procurement route. We would pull together a development brief for the site or the building. We would go out to tender seeking development partners along the lines suggested. If CPO was a consideration, it would be a last resort. It would always follow that we would seek a negotiated route. And in fact, we would be governed and required to achieve that in the first instance anyway, all the way up to a CPO. It wouldn't be a first approach, Councillor Headley. You would always look on a partnership arrangement utilising each party's key attributes, whether or not that be the land holdings, whether or not that be finance. You would also need to secure planning. So there's a whole range of elements that would need to be put in place. But I think fundamentally, you would look at a project, you would put a brief together, you would go out to the marketplace, you would follow the procurement rules, you would invite and bring forward a development partner, you would weigh up the benefits of that relationship and arrangement for the benefits of each party. And then you would proceed to assemble or progress that development. If you were seeking to site assemble and you couldn't achieve it that way, well, CPO is a possible option, but there is a whole raft and arrangements that would have to be put in place. There would have to be a social and economic benefit. You would have to have planning, funding, and a sort of a policy arrangement in place. So it's just to give you a little bit of a sort of an insight and appreciation of the various steps and measures that would need to be followed before you ever considered a CPO.
Thank you. Councillor, do you have a supplementary?
Well, if I can come back on that, I don't underestimate the difficulty the administration has in terms of delivering long overdue regeneration of the town centre, and I accept that as a criticism of the previous administration of which I was a part. The frustration for us in administration was the lack of foresight with some landowners to either maintain or encourage the viability of their sites. They seem determined to sit on some sites. So I can appreciate the difficulty you're having in site assembly. And you do go on under site provider to say profit is vital to the open market. As a Conservative, I can't disagree with that. As without there being sufficient profit margin in a scheme, a developer will not be able to secure funding. And I think this is where I believe CPO in this instance is an inappropriate vehicle. I think you should, and I'm pleased that you're saying it would be a last resort. But you've already had infrared come through with the Eastgate development that's going into planning. That was a site developer who already owns the site. The former Marks and Spencer's building, a joint venture capitalist, has secured that site. Orwell secured a site. So I think these sites will come forward without the intervention of the council using CPO orders. My concern is that having put this document in the public space, any developer or private venture capitalist will seek to go through a CPO process with you. I think they feel that will be a cheaper route. It will improve their profit margin. We know that the high density, high rise flatted developments, and we've been advised that they can't make a profit unless they go over a certain number of floors. And it's been mooted that the M&S site could have been at one time as high as 32 stories. I understand it's now been lowered to 24 stories. So I think there's a lot of unknowns in this. And whilst my group wish to see a vibrant, revitalised town centre, we honestly believe that the consultation process was so flawed, and this we won't be supporting this tonight on the basis that the paragraphs on site assembly and site provider leave us concerned with the way in which draconian powers would be used by the council in a marketplace that it's unnecessary to do. We ought to leave it.
Okay, I don't know if it was the same for everybody else, but Councillor Headley was slightly breaking up there for me, and he's now frozen on the screen. I think we got the gist there of what Councillor Headley was saying, and I will bring Tomasz in a moment. I would just point out, I don't think it is a startling surprise to a developer that a council has CPO powers. I think everybody is fully aware that a council has CPO powers, but they're also aware that it is a long, drawn-out, protracted process that takes many, many years, and in order for it to be applied, it does have to be proven as the last resort. So I'm not sure that people might sit there. Now, I fully accept that the previous administration had an issue of absent pension funds sitting on land in Basildon Town Centre. But what was key, of course, was the strategic asset acquisition that happened, a strategy that passed through an emergency full council in August last year that helped to get the ball rolling on many of those sites. And you mentioned some of them there, Councillor Headley, moving into new ownership where the new owners are behind a regeneration strategy that this council has now adopted, which enables the council to be, in an incredible position. I mean, let's just reflect as well here that in the space of 16 months, we are talking about a sheer number of applications coming forward. That if you take the council out of this and you just look at the private sector, there is in the region of £600 million of private sector money that is being pumped into Basildon to pump prime development. So it is very clear that is the private sector believe that Basildon is a huge opportunity for them across leisure, across retail, across food and beverage, across housing. So I think what this report does, and of course I'll defer to Thomas and the expertise in a moment, but what this report does is, I think, sets out very clearly no option is off the table. And I don't personally think it is a startling surprise to a developer that a council has CPO powers. But Thomas, I'll hand over to you to fill in the considerable blanks I'm sure I left.
Sure, thank you, Chair. And just to be of assistance to Councillor Headley, I think really all we've tried to sort of indicate in this paper is there are a range of options available to the council to advance the regen strategy for Basildon Town Centre, and we've just outlined what it is. And I know there's a focus on CPO, which is one of many of the tools within that box. I think that's the simplest way of putting it. The overall approach would be one of a partnership. You could see certain advantages, as I tried to outline earlier, where you're trying to assemble a site. If we own a site adjoining another owner, you could readily enter into some form of agreement with that party who could see a viable and benefits to it if it's stacked up. I think the CPO is purely just a mechanism to enable the council to disrupt the marketplace if the private sector wasn't keen to bring forward. And I think the very fact that there are 4 major planning applications running or about to in the town demonstrates that there is an interest there for the private sector to progress itself. There may be future opportunities. Bear in mind, this regen strategy is over the next 15 to 25 years. For those further opportunities with the council, and if there becomes a blockage and things can't be resolved through private treaty negotiations, then that is a tool available to the council. But as the Chair's outlined eloquently, there are a number of steps and stages and processes that would have to be followed. And the key one being is any development partner would have to indemnify the council against any potential risks associated with the CPO. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this, and I'll tell you why. If such a policy had operated previously, Wickford would have seen more regeneration by now. Now, this recommendation 2 is quite clear. It supports town centre development progress across the borough. Although the detail refers to the Basildon Town Centre, quite rightly, the overall principle applies across the borough. And I think in terms of elsewhere, and I'm talking about Wickford, it's important that we have this on board, because Wickford has suffered because there has been no sort of delivery route for any regeneration of Wickford other than in bits and pieces over the last 35, 40 years. So it's an option, and I fully support it.
Can I just build on that as well? Because recommendation 3 here talks about us to endorse or adopt the principles. And when you look at those principles, just to build on what Councillor Harrison was saying there, the key thing here for me is 5, which talks about wider benefits and long-term stewardships of the town. And if we have learned any lessons across all of our towns, and Pitsea I include as Pitsea Council this as well, then surely to God, it has to be that this council has adopted policies for 30 years that has been to give away so much of what the public should own and frankly expects us to own, whether it comes to car parks, whether it comes to shopping centres, whatever it might be. And in some cases has put us in a precarious position when it comes to being able to get development either sorted, or as Councillor Harrison's just alluded to, put it in the far, far, far too difficult to do column. So, I think the opportunity here on Principle 5 to actually ensure public ownership of assets or a greater public say in what is going on in people's town centres is such a huge principle that we shouldn't lose sight of that. Yes, finance is great. If we can make a commercial return, yes, let's do that. Let's make sure we can, get our slice of the pie as the local authority as well. So that helps us, balance the books, and the 151 will be very pleased. Great. But also, we've said all along that there's a fundamental problem here, which is that the council just simply doesn't own enough to be able to intervene strategically to direct regeneration. And that is what we are seeking to change here with this policy. So I think it's a long overdue, as Councillor Harrison has alluded to, and welcome policy. Does any member wish to say anything further on the recommendations that are listed? Councillor Headley.
Yeah, just on that last point, Leader, my understanding in the report is that you will be using funding supplied by a potential developer or a joint venture capitalist to acquire land on their behalf. You won't be acquiring land on the behalf of the council. So it won't be going into council ownership. You're using this as a vehicle to unlock sites. And having tried to do this in the past, as I've explained, I do understand your frustration with the private sector not coming forward with schemes quickly enough. But I do have a problem with the council using its CPO powers having been funded by a private developer or joint venture capitalist who can't acquire that same site through any other route.
Tomasz.
Yeah, thank you. So to address that point, Councillor Headley, there would be an agreement that would be put in place and outlined earlier through that procurement route, of which the council and that development partner would very clearly indicate through a contractual arrangement what their respective responsibilities would be. And I mentioned about the indemnification. So as the leaders indicated, there any sort of CPO approach would take time. You've got to prove various grounds, but through that legal agreement between each party, it would clearly demonstrate between each what each party would be responsible for. The council, yes, could utilise its powers, but the development partner would need to indemnify and support that. It would also, as this paper indicates, what those wider benefits and what the basis of that agreement would be. So in essence, what the risk appetite, what the sharing arrangements of any future development would be, who would have to do what in what sequence and how, and what the returns thereof. So, they're just the general sort of framework and structure of that legal agreement, which would be quite complex between the parties, but it would be clear as to what each party would derive from that arrangement and who would be covering what elements of risk and outputs and returns. So I'm just trying to give you a very broad outline. It's a very complex matter, ultimately through a legal agreement, as I've experienced myself in various other organisations. But those are the salient points, Chair.
But Tomasz, I think it's also worth making the point, is it not, that if you look at things like Sempra, where the council has got an interest, quite an obvious interest, acquisitions of land is at risk. There's no guarantee that planning is granted on land that is acquired by Sempra, regardless of whether or not the council is putting money into that project. Similarly, I would say if we were doing deals with Homes England, acquiring sites, acquiring land from Homes England, there's no guarantee that a planning committee says yes to them, but the council is putting money in at risk in order to get development off and running. So, yeah, there is the kind of the higher end, and we can I'm sure bring forward some of those points and examples, but we're already doing this, aren't we, across the borough with things like Sempra. So that predetermination point that Councillor Headley made, I think, is not necessarily accurate. But anyway, we've spent a fair bit of time on this. So is there any other member who wishes to speak? No one is indicating, in which case, members, can you unmute yourselves, please? Because the vote we will take on block. They are listed 1 to 3 on page 37. Councillor Harrison.
In favour.
Councillor Sampson.
In favour.
Councillor Headley.
Against.
Councillor Henry.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
Against.
I vote with my casting vote in favour. So the vote is carried. Thank you, Tomasz. Thank you to the officers for your help with that. Agenda item, where are we now? Where are we? 8. Basildon Town Centre regeneration update. Matt, is this you or Tomasz? Tomasz.
Sorry, just as an introduction, Chair and members, Matt will be sharing his screen in a moment to introduce the sort of a key update on the Basildon Town Centre, but also give you a little bit of a flavour of the key sort of promotional video that we're looking to bring forward in terms of Basildon, and just to give a sort of an insight to those wider benefits that we were referring to earlier. So, Matt, if you would like to share your screen and continue with that presentation, that would be really helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just check something on this agenda item? Is this the part 2, the HIF update?
It's not. No. Are you
No.
wanting to just focus on the HIF for that?
No. It's fine. I just wanted to make sure, because I know that's in part 2. That's all. Sorry.
Yes. Yep. And I'll be covering that, Chair, into part 2.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Sorry, I'll share my screen.
I think that was optimistic that we were at item 12.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity to get the town centre back to becoming a really vibrant place to go of an evening. I can't help but think it's going to be a great success.
Spent my whole life growing up in Basildon. I'm really excited about the rejuvenation in the town centre. It'll bring new nightlife with the cinema and the restaurants. Being only a good thing that it'll be smack bang on my doorstep. And I really think it'll make it a happier place down here.
The regeneration of Basildon is a good thing because it brings jobs for people like me.
It will make it more lively, more colourful. It won't be just for people to come shopping, it will be entertainment so that you can spend the whole day here.
So a lot of the hospital staff struggle to get onto the property ladder, and it will be amazing to have a transformation of Basildon Town Centre, because it will allow staff to be able to walk home and live locally.
Retail has changed enormously over recent years. It's not just about retail anymore. People want to work, live and play in their town centres.
There's a new college opening very soon. There's going to be a regeneration of properties where there's going to be a lot of housing for local people. There's going to be a cinemas opening. It's going to bring a lot more footfall to the town centre, and it's looking very, very bright.
It should be an area where people think, I'll go to Basildon because I can see a show, I can see an exhibition, almost like Basildon being the Covent Garden of the South East.
Basildon Youth Zone will be an incredible 21st century youth centre for young people to get involved in loads of different activities like sports, arts and crafts, boxing, mixed martial arts, and so much more. External evaluation shows a big impact in antisocial behaviour, with anything from 45 to 77% reduction.
A lot of people talk to me, young, old, middle-aged. They feel like it will help the local community, the local people, give them a bit more of a community. It should be good for Basildon, and I feel like Basildon needs this to become the next place to be.
The business economy in Basildon as a borough is very strong, and I'd certainly like to see the town centre prosper as a business destination. Basildon has just had its 70th anniversary, and what it needs now is a new town centre for the next 70 years and beyond.
Thank you. I'll now share my screen again, and I'll go into the town centre updates.
Yeah, so this is agenda item 9, town centre updates. Yeah.
Okay, I will assume you can see that and you can hear me. Okay, so just starting off in Basildon Town Centre, so East Square. We
can't see anything, Matt.
We can hear you.
Right, hang on.
We just can't see what it is. Just while you're doing that, just to members, that video will be available for all members to share far and wide from tomorrow. I'm sure all four will do that.
These boots are made for walking, Matt.
Sorry, did I just share the Guardian with you? I'm giving away too much there. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, can you see this?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened there. I think it's because I had the video go up. Okay, right. Try again. Okay, East Square. So we had a virtual topping out event that took place on the 13th of October, and that was actually around about the time that Basildon went into the Tier 2 lockdown. It was due to be something that happened in person, but we had to change that to an online event at the last minute. However, we were really pleased that we had representatives from Empire, along with obviously McLaren in attendance. So we had the chief executive of Empire on the call, and a golden trowel was presented to the leader. Not solid gold, as I'm told. But good progress is being made. So building will be fully watertight by December. The facade is now being installed, so that is due to commence in December as well. A local agent we're working with, so we're actively marketing the commercial units, the F&B units. And actually, until the second lockdown, that was going relatively well, again, coming out of the over the summer. But obviously now we're in kind of a difficult month again. And I think we'll just have to realise that some of the key contacts in relation to that will be on furlough for a period of time. So, but we have got good interest in those units at the moment. So construction remains on target for summer 2021 completion, and then hand over to Empire for fit out. So hopefully we'll see some really good visible progress very soon. When it gets to that watertight stage, it's quite an exciting moment in a building's evolution. Another good bit of news, so practical completion of the new college was achieved on the 27th of October. So possession was handed over to the South Essex College, and who are now in the process of moving in their equipment, moving in their furniture in readiness for opening next year, obviously pending what happens in terms of coronavirus. It's just worth noting that we are still liaising with them in relation to the externals. So we're working with Regen and planning colleagues in relation to sort of accepting that outside area. So I'm not going to mention HIF because we've got a whole report on that, the Great Oaks Quarter, which you can see the picture of. But the youth zone, so just to update, in October, P&R approved the decision to enter into discussions with BTCM regarding acquiring a particular site to bring the youth zone forward. That is Car Park 11, and that will again be touched on in Tomash's report later. And at the moment, we're just undertaking some feasibility work to ensure that the site meets the requirements of the provider, and that the consultations are taking place in that regard at the moment. Another one that we're moving forward with, and again went to the October P&R committee, is the idea of an ambulance hub on the Nethermain site. This is the previous hotel site in Nethermain. And so discussions are ongoing. They're at an early feasibility stage, and legal agreements are being discussed. And what we're hoping is that there will be some form of release of the ambulance space within the town centre, actually next to the clinic. A few other matters in the town centre. So work is progressing, as has been mentioned before, on the 4 major planning applications. So 3 of them have now been submitted. The latest being the Town Square North, the old Marks and Spencers, block, so that's now in. The remaining current application is the Carphone warehouse site, and that's due shortly as well. As always, there are key town centre potential interventions that we're tracking. Negotiations are at early stages, so as soon as we have any more information about anything that the council is intervening in, we'll let you know. So that is just a watching brief on that one as usual. But there's been some really positive work undertaken by Things Made Public and the Arts Council in relation to the cultural town centre intervention. So a couple of things. Open Lab are looking at pop-up cultural units in void units at the moment, and there is a planned town centre summer festival in 2021, obviously subject to where we all are at that point in time. Okay, moving on to Wickford, just an update on the main car park. So we're in active discussions with the adjoining landowner and other interested parties to maximise opportunity for this site. So we've had some very positive and meaningful dialogue recently. So discussions are focused around a retail-led offer with some decent public realm improvements. What we're looking at is we don't quite know at the moment what form of agreement that might take. It might be a joint venture, as mentioned by Tom Ash earlier, or it might be some other form of agreement. But that will be that will evolve in time. So yeah, positive recent discussions have taken place, although all parties need to be in alignment with aspirations, and we just do have to flag we're not the only landholder here, so we all have to be on the same page in terms of our aspirations. So any new development would always be subject to viability, and that work is evolving. So we are constantly undertaking viability reviews as we look at this, and we look at the different options that are viable at any given time. Just a quick couple of other things. So Station Avenue, there have been some high-level proposals prepared on this site, which are being costed in order to simply understand the potential of this location. So officers have made an approach to the site owner to discuss their aspirations, how they see things moving forward, and we talk about our aspirations as well. So that discussion will be taking place shortly, and we'll try and again form alignment with partners and do the best for Wickford as a whole. Wickford Station, so officers are in discussions with Greater Anglia regarding their proposals to improve Wickford Station and specifically lengthen platform 1 for new trains. So Caroline is part of the stakeholder board for that project, which is good. The work is going to be in 3 phases. So installation of a temporary ticket office, demolition and then construction of the platform extension, and construction of the new station. Sorry. Oh, I thought someone was asking a question there. I'll carry on, but do shout if you want me to stop. So phase 1 and 2 will be complete by June 2021, and we'll obviously let you know as we progress. I was chatting with Caroline earlier about that, and we understand that there should be, the whole point is that there's no disruption to residents in relation to this. Okay. Can
I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Right, is in regard to the station.
Yeah.
If you like, the revolution where now people are working from home, I don't see that going to change, because after all, it's going to pay 2,500–3,000 quid to go out to sit in an office in London when you can sit in an office at home and do the work, which is what predominantly is being done now. So, do those development plans still stack up at Wickford Station?
I think that question is probably somewhat above my pay grade in terms of because what we're talking about is a new form of train. What we will be doing as part of, I think the thing is, we are actually on the stakeholder group with this project. So those concerns we can raise at our next meeting. And Caroline is part of that process. And that is why we want to talk to the developer as soon as we can. I would say this is we haven't had any of those meetings yet. So this is an early indication. but we'll raise that, we'll raise those concerns, and we'll let you know what the outcome of that is.
Can I also ask you, you showed the Wickford Town Centre. Presumably that's the car park you're looking at.
Yeah, the main
building on, yeah?
the main car park, yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to build more retail development to be empty.
I don't want to say too much about the specifics of the plan that we're looking at the moment, because obviously that would be straying. I'm always skirting around part 2 when I do these updates. But what we're looking at potentially is an improved supermarket offer.
I think, Matt, I think what we should point out here on this site is that nothing is off the table as we sit here right now. And clearly, we all want to see an improvement to that car park and the existing site. And of course, we also have noted earlier on in the meeting the £10 million in the capital budget for this. So I don't think we can get into specifics about whether it's retail, whether it's food and beverage, whether it's leisure, whatever the class use might be, because those discussions are actively ongoing as we speak. It might not have escaped members' notices as to why we want to pencil in a 15th of December meeting to perhaps talk about this stuff in more detail at that point. But for the purposes of this I think is just a very high level. Nothing is off the table. Councillor Harrison, you indicated.
I was just going to add that, I mean, I think it is fair to say, and stop me if I'm out of order, but I'm hopeful, and I'm sure we're hopeful that any major retail offer on the market on the adjoining site will be in the form of a major supermarket to Wickford, which it needs.
Okay. Matt, do you want to carry on and then one?
I'll carry on. Yeah, thank you. Okay, just quickly on the Woodlands Road site. So this is the site that was flagged as JD Wetherspoons. So obviously the leisure and hospitality industry has been significantly hit by COVID-19. So we are working with JD Wetherspoons at the moment. We're reviewing the position. In the meantime, we are making sure that we do consider alternative options for the site should they be needed. So again, I don't want to say too much more on this at the moment as these discussions are evolving and that they're taking place at the moment. But please be assured that what we're doing is we're looking at alternatives so that we are able to move forward positively with this as a project. Just moving on, Wickford Market in the High Street. So the market is currently operating on that site, on the Woodlands Road site, on a temporary basis. And it is just to flag up that officers are continuing discussions with Essex County Council with regard to proposals to formally close the High Street on a Saturday on a trial basis. So the details of the nature of the proposals as well as a potential programme are currently being prepared. It's early days on that, but we will announce that once specific arrangements have been confirmed. So we'll come back with more detail when we can. Gibraltar Walk, staying in Wickford. As you know, this is currently being marketed, and the marketing brochure has been prepared. Adverts placed in the public arena, and we're going through an OJEU marketing process at the moment. So that is progressing well. There's been a positive response. The first stage of that process has closed. It closed on the 9th of November. We had a range of positive responses, which are currently being evaluated. We'll create a shortlist from this with a maximum of 5 companies who will be invited to a more formal tender stage. So what we're doing is going through a process of ensuring that bidders have sufficient information to provide a robust bid before the dialogue process is closed. And our aim is to be in a position to make a recommendation to P&R committee on the preferred bidder in the January committee. Moving on to Pitsea. Those pictures on the right are from yesterday. So there was another fire in the bingo hall. Actually, there has been further damage to the front of the building. I think the owner, again, Caroline liaised with them earlier today, they are having difficulty ascertaining the level of the damage due to the previous fire damage that was in evidence in the building. So that's by the by in relation to the next points, which are, so discussions are ongoing with the owners around the future options for the property. We have flagged before that there are viability concerns at the moment, but the regeneration and planning are helping the owners to explore all avenues and to help them to come up with a viable project, a realistic project for that location. And remedial improvements have been apparently undertaken as part of the Section 215 notices for tidy sites, but planning enforcement inspections, they're slightly up in the air due to the fire that we've just had, but we'll update in due course when they are going to be undertaking their inspections. And then the phase 2 redevelopment work. So LCP are reviewing. So there's been reconnection with LCP, as you remember. I think during the first lockdown, there was we didn't get a great deal of engagement on this particular project. So they are reviewing their proposals for phase 2 at the moment. There are viability issues, and that they remain, and so that there are viability issues around the current proposals. They are only going to get more challenging in light of the current economic climate, but officers are in open discussions. We're looking at making sure that all future opportunities can be maximised, including potential for a land swap to create a more active frontage. We're awaiting feedback from LCP on some further proposals that we've made, some high-level proposals. As a leader mentioned before, some more information, some more detailed information will be forthcoming on this as we have that moving forward. Just on other matters, Pitsea, so new planting is to be installed throughout the town centre. That's been approved by the Pitsea Town Centre Working Group. And just an update, the clock on Pembroke House has now been repaired, and we have checked it with our own eyes through the funding from the working group. On to Laindon. So Swan are progressing well on site. The structure for the main office block is now in place and work underway on block A. The Liddell site is being prepared. That's due to start on site in early 2021. The officers have been in dialogue with Swan and the NHS in relation to finalising the internal layouts for the health centre. That's a kind of a critical point. And we're looking to freeze the design on that imminently and to ensure that this is fit for purpose. So legal work to draft the necessary documentation is due to commence as soon as that stage is resolved. And then I think finally, the landmark development and delivery of the 14 homes by Swan is now complete. So handover's taken place of all but one of those units. The post office have now informed Swan that they will not be taking up space in the Laindon library. Both Swan and Regen colleagues have been in touch with the post office in relation to this. Apparently all new acquisitions are on hold since the start of the pandemic. So we will continue to work with them and we'll continue to monitor that situation. We'll let you know as things evolve in that regard. So with regards to the options for public realm, which is just outside of the Swan remit, the topographical and tree survey has now been completed and results will inform the emerging design. So we're working with architects at the moment to consider that and move that particular project forward. And I believe that is the end of the update. So I'll stop sharing my screen now and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Matt. Open this up to members for questions. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Matt, again, as always, for an excellent presentation. I'm very, very pleased to hear that there's progress being made on the health centre in Langdon. That's really, really good news. And we'll say no more about it until we actually get some proper details. It's incredibly disappointing that we've got this far along the journey and we're still not with a post office in Langdon. You know, I know that my colleagues at Essex County Council have been trying to find a resolution to this. I know they've been working with the company that owns either the franchise or the business that was due to come to us. So it'll be terrible news for the residents of Langdon who have been having to go elsewhere and do a little sub post office counters wherever they can find them. But is it possible? Do we know if they are one of the people who will be taking a property in the development once it's up and running and finished, or whether they're going to be sort of a sub post office of part of another building?
Matt.
Sorry, Langdoners have always been led to believe that the post office was a permanent fixture, that we'd have one. It may not be a Crown post office, as that was the last one in the borough at the time, but we were always sort of led to believe that it would definitely be coming back to the new development, and that the library solution was just a temporary sort of bridging solution.
Yeah.
Just be careful, Matt, that we're not venturing into part two.
Yeah, all I'd say on that is I don't know, to be brutally honest. I will check with Swan and we'll come back to you on that point, if that's okay.
Thank you. That's very good. Thank you. Thanks, Matt.
Members, any other? Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I welcome Matt's comments on both the market site and the main car park site, and also the end of the market site, that we are looking at alternative options should Wetherspoons not wish to continue. But also, I think for the first time that we are making approaches to the landowner in Station Avenue, which has stood empty now for God knows how many years and been a car park. And it's the entrance to Wickford, which is an important gateway to the town. So good that we're going to talk to those people. Hopefully there will be some good news in the very near future.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Can I ask the head of planning, who is, I hope, still on the line, the situation with regards to the bingo hall? As the owner of the bingo hall, did they ever come back to us after our meeting with them to confirm their plans?
We have met them twice now, not very successfully. So I think it needs some further interventions, which actually I was just contacting the enforcement team about our next steps with that site. And I think this goes into the discussions we had earlier on about the options that we've got open to us would fall very much into the discussions that you were having about acquisitions of land. And this is when actually things like CPOs are actually quite good. So, we might look at, and the threat of that in this instance might be a good option for us once we look at things like Section 215 non-compliance, which obviously is a criminal offence.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting we have done that previously, haven't we? 215.
Yeah, I mean, they used it's a very nice bit of legislation. It basically, go back to Councillor Headley's position about draconian legislation. It's probably the most draconian part of our legislation, actually, because it allows us to go on and do things that people don't want to do without actually much recourse to the appeal process. So it is quite a nice bit of legislation to allow us to look at refreshing and renewing properties. And if they don't, then obviously this is when a CPO can be quite useful for us to step in and take action and actually then acquire properties and look at back-to-backs with other developers to bring the sites forward.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's helpful. And we obviously want to draw a line under the issue of the bingo hall, but it is one of those, until we get sensible heads in a room, it is not going to happen. So we've got to move on that. And if, as you say, there is recourse available to the council through other means that we discussed earlier on tonight, then perhaps the committee and P&R need to look at that as well going forward. But that is helpful. And as ever, Matt, a very useful round of updates across the 5 towns. Members, any further points on this, or we will move on to agenda item 10, which is the COVID impact assessment. Tomasz, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick sort of run through. Members may be aware of this, but if not, a quick rendition of the funding that is available, and I'm providing this from a sort of economic and regen perspective. There's additional funding for the clinically extremely vulnerable. There's approximately £32 million that is being given to local authorities nationally to support people who need it by helping people to access food and meeting other support needs whilst they stay at home during the 28 period. Payments are being sort of directed through upper tier local authorities and then transferred into lower tier councils. There's also a coronavirus extended job retention scheme, basically for businesses being paid upfront to cover wage costs. This is going to be extended until December, and it provides approximately 80% of wages up to a cap of £2,500, and employees will have their national insurance contribution and pension contributions covered by the employers for the hours that they don't work. Some other general points is various national lockdown, localized restriction grants for businesses. This is again for the lockdown period, and it's a mandatory grant for businesses with a business rates liability. There's an additional restrictions grant up to March, end of March, a discretionary grant aimed at those businesses who perhaps have closed, not closed, but be severely impacted, or for businesses that have a liability for business rates. In addition, there's test and trace support payments. This is aimed for people on very low incomes, where a lump sum payment of £500 is made available for those people who have had to self-isolate, and obviously subject to various criteria thereof. There's business bounce back loans. These are for small businesses that are struggling due to the coronavirus. It can apply for approximately 100% state-backed loan, which can be up to about £50,000. And there's no interest being charged or repayments needed in the first 12 months. And applicants have got up until the 31st of January 21 to apply. Also, self-employed income support scheme, grant extension. The Chancellor announced that the UK government is increasing the overall level to the next level up to 80% of trading profits. And in essence, it means that a taxable grant would be based on 80% of the 3 months average trading profits, and capped at £7,500. So those are the main funding elements that the government is providing. Just from our own localised perspective, Patrick Cole, who's been covering the high streets and engaging with local SMEs in Pitsea, Billericay, Wickford and Basildon, just to try and help businesses improve their resilience and their trading capacity. He's been arranging various liaison through multiple channels, including weekly Zoom calls, meetings, personal visits, email exchanges and phone calls, all of which have been to try to help local businesses, particularly on the high streets. And also, we are aware that he's also providing that support through the local Shop Safe. And we have engaged with local businesses on the high streets recently to try and sort of assist further with their requirements. So that's a quick cavalier run through the key benefits and elements that we are progressing, Chair.
Thank you, Tomasz, and that is very helpful. And clearly we are also, Mandy and I have had conversations already with comms. We launched the kind of Shop Safe, Shop Local campaign after the first lockdown, and clearly, God willing, we're out of this on the 2nd of December. But at some point in December, we will need, a new campaign around backing Basildon's businesses around this Christmas. So getting people, back onto the high street, shopping local, helping to support, and the car parking freezers that we've undertaken are carrying on as well throughout the Christmas period. So that is helpful. The Staffing Matters subcommittee, of which myself and Councillor Headley are members, meets on Thursday, and we have a whole range of discretionary policies to agree at that meeting, which will help our businesses. And the key thing here is looking at how we target businesses who were perhaps left out first time round when it came to them not being a business rateable business, and therefore they were in a communal office, but whatever it might be on our high streets, that they may be eligible for some more help and support going forward this time around. So I'm hopeful that by the end of this week we'll be in a very strong position to get that money out quickly. And I have to say and put on record again, huge thanks to Rob Manser and Shanna and all of the Revenue and Benefits team, because not only have they led the work here in Basildon to support our businesses and our high streets, they've actually been leading the work across the whole of Essex. So that's a huge job of work that they've done. So it will be incumbent upon all of us as members as well to get the message out to our constituents and to our businesses in the weeks and months ahead that those applications are live, and to come forward and get the money that hopefully they can get their hands on quickly to help keep them and their employees in work. So thank you, Thomas. Any member have a question on the COVID update? In which case we will go to agenda item 11. Sorry, Jeff, did I miss you? Did you want to come in then?
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to know what's the impact for the clinically extremely vulnerable amongst our own people, the people that work for us as an authority? Is there a big proportion of people, a reasonable proportion? Are we doing everything we can to support them? Are they able to work from home? What's the picture there for council employees?
Yeah, I think, Mandy, we can say with some degree of certainty that we're not seeing huge numbers in the clinically vulnerable group, but you may wish to update, Councillor.
Really?
Just generally, the council in terms of absence from work with regard to COVID has been minimal. Individuals, we have supported working from home programmes, and most of the organisation has successfully worked from home since the first lockdown. And in terms of individuals who were shielding, of course, we supported them throughout that, but they have been successful to work from home. So, and our absence levels are probably the lowest we will have experienced in Basildon Council. So,
thanks, Mandy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, members. Agenda item 11 is the exclusion of the public and press as we move into talking about commercially sensitive information to protect the taxpayer. Can I ask members to unmute themselves as we take a vote on whether to exclude the press and the public for the remainder of the meeting? Councillor Harrison.
In favour.
Councillor Burton-Sampson.
In favour.
Councillor Headley. Councillor Headley.
Sorry, my screen is not unmuting. Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
In favour.
Councillor Morris.
In favour.
I vote in favour. Thank you. Can we please turn off the YouTube channel? Thank you to members of the public for tuning in your thousands.